guys, what is up? My name is Megan and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new, and welcome to Bookmas. If you guys have been missing out on my videos, which if you have, I suggest subscribing and liking this video. I have been doing Bookmas, so every day until December 25th I upload a new book related video, and sometimes specifically book tied in with Christmas videos like today's video, which is the Christmas movie book tag. I found this book tag on a blog, which I will link in the description for you guys if you want to check it out. I truly do not know the original creator, but I believe where I found this tag. Now this tag is to pair books with prompts that relate to Christmas movies. Without further ado, let's hop on in. The first Christmas movie is Elf, and for that the prompt is to choose a book that puts you in a Christmas mood. If you've been following my channel, I think you could definitely guess what I'm about to say, but for me that has to be Dash and Lily's Book of Dares, and this is just my OG Christmas book. It has also been turned into a Netflix series this year, if you guys were not aware, but this is a book I reread every year. It follows Dash and Lily, and basically Lily is kind of having a hard time making friends, and more so romantically involved friends, and she as well as her brother get this idea to make a Book of Dares and put it in her favorite place in the world, which is the Strand bookstore in New York. This is a Christmas holiday book that is set in New York, and we follow Lily and Dash, who finds the notebook, and they send each other on dares. And Lily loves Christmas, Dash is a Christmas grump, and it's their romance. There is a sequel to this as well, and I think a third book may have come out. I just love it. It gives me all the feels. I really enjoy it, and it is a Christmas reread, so it definitely puts me in the Christmas mood. The next question is for the movie It's a Wonderful Life, and for that one we have the question, name a book where a main character gets serious character development. And for that I'm going to kind of name two characters, or both parties involved in the relationship, in You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hoggle. If you, again, have been following my channel, you know this book was quite a surprise for me. This is a debut author, a debut novel, and it is an adult romance, and I just fell in love head over heels. The concept of this book is love to hate to love. We follow a couple that is actually engaged and going to be married. However, our main female protagonist has kind of fallen out of love, but doesn't have enough money in order to break off this engagement and wedding without having to pay like a serious ton of cash, which she doesn't have. And so her plan is to be the most despicable human being until her fiance decides to break off the wedding, and therefore if he breaks it off, he has to pay for it. Both characters are kind of at each other's throats. There's a lot of bickering and just all, you know, it's not the healthiest of relationships. However, as they pull these pranks on each other, they kind of remember why they fell in love with each other, and their relationship takes a whole other turn, and they get to fall in love again. I really appreciated the commentary on relationships, the growth that is separate to individuals, and how that affects a relationship, and how both of our main characters, well, our main character and the love interest, realize that both of them had issues they needed to work on, and the relationship had issues, and they wanted to make it work, so in the end it did work out. And the character growth in this is amazing. The commentary on relationships, societal expectations, what it could be to live with in-laws or have in-laws who don't perceive things the same way as you, and just the overall pressure of life, of money on relationships, of different employments and different standards. There's just so many things in here, and I really do think our main character goes through a lot of character development. The next movie is A Christmas Carol, and the prompt for that is to choose a book with a character who you didn't really like at first but grew to love, and for that I have to go with Lana in Mistletoe Mr. by Sarah Morgan Taylor. This is the second in the Moose Spring companion series, and basically Lana, who is a main character in this one, was actually a side character in the first book, The Tourist Attraction. In The Tourist Attractions, she is best friends with our main character, and I really didn't like how Lana was described, her motivations. I didn't really understand her as a character until this book, where I completely understood where she was coming from, and being in her head was very gratifying, and it kind of made me change my perspective on a lot of things about this character. Lana comes from a very rich background, and in the first book she's kind of portrayed as that rich friend that doesn't really care for anyone, and she's not cautious, she doesn't think a lot of things into consideration, and once we actually are in her head, we realize that she goes through a lot of struggles with her family and keeping up her reputation, and that she's never quite had a home, and that's why she has such an attachment to Moose Springs and wants to put a part of herself in this town, even though the town people think she's doing it for such poor reasons. You kind of understand where she's coming from, her difficulty with relationships, how her family dynamics are kind of messed up, and I ended up loving her and her convictions and what she stands for. So yes, I grew to love Lana. The next movie is Home Alone, and for that the prompt has to be name a book where a parent isn't present, or if they are, they aren't really good parents. And you gotta hear me out on this one. I'm going to say the parents in the Every Heart a Doorway series, because most of them are not present, because a lot of the children are sent to this school where their children are kind of different, and when there are parents in here, they are not good parental figures. Every Heart a Doorway is a YA series of like novellas. It is all fantasy, and it's basically the concept of what if when you were a child you could go through these doors and they kind of appeared and it brought you to a world that fits you, but sometimes these worlds actually reject you at a certain age, or if you've done something bad and then you're stuck living in the real world where you don't feel as understood. So it's kind of like a Narnia-esque adventure, but with more subplots and more thought out, in my opinion. Mostly when I think about this prompt, I think about the second book, which is Down Among the Sticks and Bones, and we follow two twins, Jack and Jill, and their parents were terrible in my opinion because they tried to inflict different gender stereotypes on their children. They absolutely wanted a girl and a boy, and so they kind of forced roles on their children. Even though they had two daughters, they from birth decided like, you're gonna be the girly girl one and you're gonna play soccer and play in the mud, and they forced these gender roles on them even though their kids didn't feel right and it didn't click with them, and so it kind of screwed them up, if I'm totally honest. And there's a lot of exploration of the impacts on them, so I think that the parents sucked, and that's my answer for that. The next movie is Frosty the Snowman, and for that we need to find a book with snow on the cover, and for this one I'm going with One Way or Another by Karen McDowell. This, I don't know if you can see, but it has little snowflakes all in the snow globe, and it has them on the back. I didn't want to repeat some of the other books I've been talking about that had snow on them. This is a book I haven't read yet, but I will be reading for my This Season-a-thon, or have read already, depending how it goes. I don't know really when this video will be up, if it's before or after, but it's on my Tis the Season-a-thon TBR. This is a YA contemporary that follows a main character named Paige who suffers from anxiety. I don't know if it's diagnosed or not, but I know there's a lot of anxiety wrap in here. Paige struggles to make decisions, just like me, and I think she is faced with two last-minute decisions on what to do for Christmas, and she can't decide, and the world kind of splits in half, where she kind of sees or goes through the events of both choices she would have picked, and I think there's romantic interests in both, and she's going to have to make an overall decision or something of the sorts. I know this is around Christmas time and it has anxiety. That's all I need to know. And it has snow. The next movie is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and for that we need to name a book with a protagonist you couldn't help but root for. And this is actually a video I'm going to bring to you guys more in depth, where I talk about all my favorite book protagonists, so be on the lookout for that in another Bookmas video. Basically, for this I had to go with my go-to forever answer, and that is Kate in Listen to Your Heart by Casey West. This is a book I talk about constantly, even though I've read and reread, and most of you guys are maybe sick and tired of hearing me talk about this, but even though I'm now 23 years old, I relate to the main character in this book 1000%, and that is why I can't help but root for her happiness, because she reminds me so much of my past teenage self and myself in the present, actually. Listen to Your Heart is a quiet contemporary that follows a main character named Kate, who is all about the lake and nature life. Her parents own a marina and she loves spending time on the lake. She's not too much of a social butterfly. She sticks with her little group of friends and wish she could go to a school that was closer to her so she didn't have to deal with all these townspeople. Her best friend actually kind of pushes Kate to go into this podcasting class with her, and the podcasting class will record, and in order to be a podcast host, which would be like Kate's nightmare, you need to be selected for the best podcast topic, and it ends up that Kate is the winner and she needs to host this podcast, which ends up being about advice. We have this mystery caller, different kind of romances, and it's just a little all over the place, but I could not help but root for Kate and her exploration of her identity and realizing that there's other things than the lake and that maybe she's better at other things than she expected, and kind of her finding herself, finding a relationship. I love this book. I reread it every single year and I could not recommend it enough. I love Kate to pieces. Kate is me and therefore I root for her. The next prompt or movie is The Polar Express, and for that you need to pick a book that is set somewhere cold or the characters travel somewhere cold. For that I went with The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This is a book I read recently and completely changed my outlook on so many things, as I mentioned in the vlog where I read this. This kind of inspired me and made me think more than a non-fiction book would. This follows a main character who has been very much down on her luck. Her life has been very hard. She is going through difficult times. She's getting fired from her job. Her cat actually got in an accident and died. And she has struggled with mental health illnesses for the longest time. And so she decides that she no longer wants to be part of this world and commits suicide by taking prescription medication. There are trigger warnings for this, so if it's something that interests you, please go and look them up before you read this book. But the entire concept of this is really because our main character is transported to this midnight library, which is a world between life and death, and this library contains all the different life decisions our main character could have taken from childhood and how her lives would be different. This is an opportunity for her to visit different lives and find the one she would want to live in, and a few of the lives where she visits are actually set in like Antarctica and very cold places, and I thought this would be interesting for this plot because obviously the Polar Express is an adventure and it's kind of our main character going to somewhere cold and learning about himself and his beliefs, and it is kind of a reflection of what happens in this book as well. Game changer, love it. Now I want to read all of Matt Haig's books. The next movie is How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and it is to name a villain you couldn't help but love, and I am drawing a blank here, you guys. I don't specifically read a lot of fantasy or books where there's an actual villain, and if I do, I don't usually love them, so I'm just gonna answer nothing for this question. If you have villains that you hate, let me know in the comments though. I would be really interested to see what yours are. The second to last Christmas is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Name a book with a character that has a goofy sense of humor, and for that I don't have a specific character, but a book that has made me laugh countless times and that I giggle all the way through, and that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. It is a well-loved book of mine in 2020. It has gotten me out of some darker times, and I read it just at a perfect time for me. It means a lot emotionally, but it's also one of the books that I've had the most physical reactions to, like I actually laughed out loud and giggled and all of these things. This follows a main character named January who is going to this beach home and she needs to empty it out. It used to be her father's, but her father's has passed away, and she sees this next door neighbor who is named Augustus, and he was in college with our main character, and they had kind of a one-sided rivalry where our main character felt like she was rivals with him because whatever she did, he did better. Both of them are authors, and our main character was taking the time at the beach house to also take as a writing retreat because she's kind of in a slump, and it's them exchanging genres for the summer and falling in love in the process. They take each other on writing dates. One of them is a literary writer, which Augustus is, and our main character January is a women's fiction writer and kind of romance. She used to believe in happily ever afters. He's more of a grump, and I love this book. So many things made me laugh. All the orange tabs are more moments where I giggled and laughed out loud. So that has to be my answer for this one. And the last question is a Lifetime/Hallmark movie which is named the cheesiest romance. And for that I really have to go with the Heartbreakers, or the Heartbreakers series in general by Ali Novik. This used to be a Wattpad, and the first 2 books are published. The first being Heartbreakers and the second one is Paper Hearts. This is a YA series that follows, the first one actually follows a main character who has 2 siblings, and they're all they're triplets, if I'm not mistaken, or twin. Anyway, she has a sister and a brother, and her sister, who is her twin, is actually very ill. She is in love with this band called the Heartbreakers, but obviously she can't go see them in concert or anything because she's in treatment. And so for her birthday, our main character and her brother decide to go to a signing they are having and take her merch and get it signed for her sister, which is adorable. But they actually have, well, our main character has an encounter with one of the lead members of the band, the lead singer, in a Starbucks before the signing, and then they kind of end up re-meeting again and a friendship, and then more blooms. Our main character is actually an aspiring photographer, and so she ends up getting a gig to photograph the boys on tour, and it's just so much fun. I love boy band romances, and it's very cheesy but so endearing. So that's it for today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed. If you want to participate in the tag, I will leave the questions in the description. You can answer via video and tag me, or also just do it in the comments and I will try to look at them. So thank you so much for watching. Come back tomorrow for the next Bookmas video, and I'll see you very soon. Bye guys, happy reading.